This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Aaron Helton. We're going to talk about neurodivergence and non-traditional leadership. And I want to thank you and welcome you to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm doing very well tonight, and I'm really excited to be a part of the show.
Well, it's great to talk to people from around the world. A couple of questions we always ask anybody before we get into the heart of the interview is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Oh, wow. What motivates me? Part of my story is growing up homeschooled and, not knowing that at the time I was diagnosable autistic. And I didn't know that until 2023, I believe, nearly 2 years ago. But what motivates me is connection. I've always been intensely curious about just learning about the people around me, understanding, well, you're different than me. Why? Or I'm different than you. Why? Can we find a way to connect? And what are we interested in? Where's the common ground? Can we embrace our differences and be better together? And I've been interested in that and psychology and things like that since I was about 13. So the reason I do what I do is just simply because I love it. I love seeking connection with others, and which I'm doing right now through you and hopefully through the listeners as well.
I think it's awesome. Being a creative person, being a podcast producer, musician, and a software engineer, you three hats. I'd like to just, deal with interesting people and creativity from like a left and right brain.
Absolutely.
And what I find is I like to merge things that people say you shouldn't merge, like art and science.
Okay, you're right up there with the IO psychologists. We love the practitioner and the scientist side. So that beautiful blend of different pieces is that's where the magic happens. Absolutely.
You think about like the bell curve. Like a lot of times, like the creative people are not in the bell. They're on the outside, and then companies are always saying we want the creative people, but then they want to put them in a box.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
They put them in the box. Like a creative person, like a neurodivergent person, they might not do well in the box.
Exactly.
But you say you want that talent that comes out of the box, but then you want to put them in the box.
Exactly. Yeah, it's tough because we live in a bunch of structures that teach us to conform, essentially. And not only conform, but, I was reading, I believe it was The Big Book of Beautiful Questions by, I think, Warren Berger, Berger, or A More Beautiful Question. He has two books that are pretty similar titles. But then he was talking about the research of, I think it was between the ages of 4 and 5, the amount of questions that we ask just drops significantly because we become less curious. Because guess what happens at 4 or 5 years old? You go to kindergarten, you start going to school, you start being told, you've got to be in the box and you have lunch at this time and do all these things. And, we have a lot of stories and in sitcom media and just personal anecdotal stories of ADHD or neurodivergent children that learn, well, I had a really tough time in school, but once I left those structures, I was able to thrive. I myself work through a lot of flexibility and a lot of, we talk about authenticity. I have a lot of recharge time. And in exchange, I have a lot of moments where I can sit down and buckle down on something for 10 hours straight and forget to eat, which is not entirely healthy, but is a strength that I can tap into due to my, ability to hyper focus. And, from that kind of, what do I want to say here? The average 8-hour workday, people get 3 hours of productivity done. And so when I work for 10 hours, I get 10 hours of productivity done. But in exchange, I burn out for that, honestly, a similar amount of time. And so it's really important to really learn yourself and know yourself, but also embrace that non-traditional nature, that neurodivergent nature of different employees and different people, because we're not all the same. And it simply is not a one-size-fits-all world.
Yeah, because it's real interesting because I have a software hat, like say, and I work remotely. I've been working remotely for like 5 years.
Excellent.
I used to be a road warrior.
Yeah.
And it used to be the expectation, got to go Sunday to Thursday and flying around. I lived in Tokyo. I was all over the place.
Wow.
And eventually I said, you know what? There's things I want to do where I'm a musician, right? I'm a podcaster. I'm a creative. And I like doing the software work.
Absolutely.
And I found a way to work with a smaller business, kind of startup, entrepreneurial, not a Fortune 500, a smaller level company that was willing to deal with what I could do. because I like you. I mean, I can do a lot of work, and I can get it done kind of quickly, or I can get it really
Mhm.
hyper focused, and I don't have to be in the box. You don't have to watch me like a kid,
Absolutely.
and they got this mindset with some of the tech companies or some of the bigger companies. They think they got to watch people like their children.
Yeah.
Like, why? Well, maybe some people you do, but
Mhm.
a lot of people you don't. And so it's like I don't know where to get these ideas,
Mhm.
but they want the creativity of a person who who can do it, but then they don't want to listen to what that person needs
Yeah.
to
I'll tell
actually
you.
work. It was like, what? Like, it's like you guys just want to top down it and say, be
Mhm.
like that under my conditions,
That's
and I
exactly
impose
it,
on
and
you.
I know it's a rhetorical question saying what leads them to that, but I actually know the answer, and it's fear. Simple as that. And now it's not the panicking type of fear that we think of, but in our business, there's two lifestyles that we look at. There's living with passion or leading with passion or living in fear. And what happens is fear are the people that keep you under them under their thumb and say, well, as long as I keep you in this box, I'm safe because you're not threatening my leadership. And that's where, like, I as a coach would come in and talk with them and say, what's inside of you? What belief system do you have that says if this person is creative, I'm in danger, I'm threatened? And that's the fear. Because once you get at that and they say, well, if they're creative, they're going to take my job, or they're going to be more useful than me, and I have to be the most useful, or something like that. And you get into that mindset and you talk to them and realize, oh, well, let's dispel that belief. And that's where that neurodivergent, that non-traditional, that can shine, because it comes down to, okay, now I, as the leader who was fearful, now can feel more curiosity, more passion, more like there's more psychological safety on both parties to then explore how can our relationship evolve if I set aside the feelings I have of being threatened, or I explore those and realize, oh, that's coming from a need to be number one. I don't need to be number one anymore. Like, that's a
Yeah,
dysfunctional belief that's hurting my business. And then that individual that was being squashed then gets to thrive. And that's where interconnection comes in, and the beautiful things that we can accomplish as a species comes through when we start to understand each other, because we're being passionate, not fearful. But that's where
but
it comes from, that fear.
I think also you think about like individualism
Mhm.
versus like this idea that you can work as a team, right? If
Mhm.
you're in a team, you need everybody on the team, right? If you're in a band, you need
Absolutely.
the whole band. You can't just be the lead singer out by yourself. I guess you could with a DJ. You could
Right.
with a software. We run into the consequences of people doing that now, but the idea is like that you should not fear that the other person's gonna take your role. You,
Absolutely. Yeah.
the problem is it's like safety. It's kind of like the wolf at the door is now like you're scared of all these talented people. Maybe they're going to take your position. Like maybe the board of directors will say, "Hey, this guy's the hot shot. He's going to take your spot." So then that everybody's always scared that they're going to get replaced.
That's the fear.
You know?
Absolutely. And that's what we work to kind of dispel, is what the fear serves a need. Unfortunately, like, it helps, but it doesn't. In the situation with the wolf, it's fight or flight, simple as that. And it's healthy in a fight or flight situation of, this wolf is scary, it's dangerous, it can hurt me, I have to run or I have to yell at the wolf. Now, you get that same fight or flight, and we as human beings have evolved, so our fight or flight has evolved too. And so you get that wolf and you turn it into a 2 p.m. text, and it just says from your boss or your spouse or something, it says, we need to talk, and you turn into that, okay, I'm gonna fight, right? And it's no, no, no,
Right.
no, no. Then that leads to even more fights, right? And so that's where we do the work of, hey, what's that belief? Why do you believe that when you're threatened you have to fight? Because this is not a wolf, this is your spouse, or it's your boss, and this is a team. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, I'm thinking of jazz, and everybody wants to be a soloist, and jazz works beautifully because of that chaos. And sometimes there's a beautiful structure that comes. But
Yeah.
in a band, when somebody just goes off on a solo, and sometimes some band members do not like it and others enjoy it. And so it's learning the band members. So as we talk about the team, it's also understanding enough about the team and enough about yourself of, you know what, I love doing my solos. Am I in the right environment to be playing my solos, essentially?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Is
just
it
takes a
actually
lot of
gonna
curiosity.
Yeah, the thing is, like if you're showboating and the
Mhm.
rest of the band kinda like, it's like verbal and nonverbal communication. Like,
Exactly.
when you have a really cool fusion jazz band, everybody kinda knows the mark of how long they should go.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
then if you're like, if you get in that band and you've never been in the band, you might go showboating to go beyond the mark, and then you'll
Mhm.
see the glances. It's like, you kinda gone beyond the mark. So
Exactly.
so the idea is, like, how do you, like, serve the song? Like, there's no so-called bad note, but there's an opportunity. There's
Mhm.
a story about Herbie Hancock and Miles Davis where he hit a wrong chord.
Yep.
Wrong chord for the song, and Miles actually changed the song, his part to match what Herbie did, and
Wow.
then told him later that there's nothing wrong with doing that because we're in experimental music, like,
Yeah.
it's evolves the song, and then he said, it made him wanna live in the moment rather than trying to replicate a p specific moment, which is
Absolutely.
how you actually evolve, the piece. You
It
evolve the
is.
piece by over time, either bands like Weather Report or Sun Ra or John Coltrane, they would evolve the piece over time. The live version of it would change over time to fit the mood or get different sections. And over time, there's famous bands, Pink Floyd, evolved songs over different periods to become certain things.
Yeah.
It's like that evolution. People today, they don't like it, or they
Mhm.
try to tamp things down. They try to control it so much. There's like,
Yeah.
where's the passion in just being the sameness? The
Yeah, and
sameness
honestly,
where yeah, it's so boring.
I love that we're talking about this from a musical standpoint. I love the opportunity to be on this and talk it from a musical standpoint. Because being a business coach, when I think of you talked about the song and I think of teams in a business. And so you talk about, well, what's the purpose of the song? What's the vibe of the song essentially? And it makes me think of teams in a business and think, yeah, well, what's the purpose of the team? That's when you start to see how is every member working towards what goal. If you're the IT team, then okay, how are we creating safety in the firewalls or whatever their goal is for that specific team. And with the song, it's so interesting to hear like they changed the whole song off of this strong player because I wonder, is that possible in the business? You see a
Yeah,
lot of that in
it can
startups.
happen in a smaller business,
Yeah,
but if you got so much
large
overhead,
one, absolutely not. Yeah.
if you got I've been a big, like, Fortune 500 company
Mhm.
with a lot of overhead, a lot of bureaucracy, PMO,
Yeah.
heavy structure. So they had all these gates,
Hmm.
all these approvals, and I understand why. But the problem is, like, if an idea comes from the floor, like it comes from the designers or the lower level engineers, but not from the architect.
Hmm.
Some organizations are totally top down, got to come from the CEO and the architect down. Other organizations are willing to listen to the floor software developers and engineers. If they come up with a happy accident that's better than the plan, they're willing to look at it. Other organizations that know, they'll put it off to the side and then they really don't look at it. The
Absolutely.
organizations that really develop amazing stuff are the ones who listen to that stuff that kind of comes up from the floor.
Exactly. That's like the book, The Toyota Way, I believe, when they embraced that everybody, I think it was 5,000 employees at the time. It's been a while since I've read it, so excuse me if I'm slightly off on the number. But they had embraced anybody could come in and they would get, I think, a bonus or an incentive to making the process more efficient because that was their goal, efficiency. And so I believe some of the employees that were seeing it firsthand, the people that were actually creating the cars,
And they can see
generally
it.
in businesses,
Yeah.
exactly. They see it, they know it, they feel it in their heart versus the people that, I don't subscribe to the ivory tower kind of situation. I know that every role has slightly different needs, etc. And there are still, some situations where some businesses where they're disconnected like that. But, you know, every role has a necessary purpose. And so when you realize, hey, the people that are right in front of it are just simply getting exposed to it more. The foremen in the construction companies, the nurses in the healthcare that are sitting there right there every day
On
talking
the front
to
line. Yeah, on the front line, you
exactly
see the problem in real
frontline.
time.
Absolutely.
Versus like the problem is like, how is that problem communicated to the CFO? How is it
Exactly.
communicated to the CEO? It might be communicated through a lens that isn't going to solve the problem.
And that's
Okay?
exactly it. That's when you have to diagnose that moment and say, okay, we need better communication in this business. And sometimes the neurodivergents or the non-traditionals are the ones that kind of
They'll
shake
do
up the system
it.
and reveal that pain. So
Yeah,
I
they might
love
not
doing
know
that.
that it's not correct to
Exactly.
actually speak the truth of that situation. This thing doesn't fit right.
Yep.
And I deal with this thing 1,000 times,
Mhm.
and it could be done better. And even though I didn't go to Carnegie Mellon, I didn't have an engineering doctorate, it doesn't work,
Yep.
right? And so some people was like get out of sorts because he's not in his place to say that, right? Because you got your degree. It's like, well, it's not about. It's about like what's going to move the organization forward. If there's something that's wrong, like I worked in Japan for 2 years, and there's a kind
Yeah.
of idea is like if there's something wrong, they're gonna fix it. Like the defect,
Mhm.
zero defect mindset is like the defects are important, right? And so I was there, and I was in a financial situation where American companies trying to say, well, we don't look at like level 10 defects like level one, and the Japanese managers were saying we look at all of them at the same level.
Mhm.
And in fact, we were going to go and book a like a convention hall to apologize to the policyholders because they made a mistake on the annual statement. And so they
Wow.
went to apologize in a speaking. They actually booked a convention hall to apologize to the customers. The
Wow.
American managers were like dumbfounded
Mhm.
and they
Yeah.
just send a little letter out,
Mhm.
to do that.
Yeah, that level of respect is impressive. Like, that is customer service taken to the extreme, honestly, and, there is definitely just inspiration there in some cases, absolutely.
Totally different culture. But the
Mhm.
funny thing was the Americans were trying to force the American culture into a Japanese marketplace. I was like, you and I was there for 2 years as an expat. I was trying to tell the American people from Connecticut, I was like, the customers here expect this.
Mhm.
American customer maybe doesn't expect that, but you're selling in Japan, right?
Mhm.
So if the policyholders here expect that, and then you think you can force them not to, you know, the other company that understands that is going to do better than us.
Mhm.
Because you
That's
can't
exactly
just
it, you gotta know your
and
market.
just force it down their throat because you think like, this is where you kind of get these ideas like national boundaries or international sense. You've got to have a more diverse workplace to understand the culture, and having the
Absolutely.
same people in the same room that maybe have a bias and then say they don't have a bias.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? There's a bias.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of it too, that culture, that diversity is when you expose yourself to a larger variety of differences, not only just through the people, but cultures, environments, etc. Like even looking at hybrid workplace, during COVID, as unfortunate as it was for the lockdown and things like that, a lot of people had suffered mental health issues and had a tough time. Others thrived because they realized, oh, the $600 stipend just helped them to, oh, I can live finally. Or some that worked from home said, oh, wow, I didn't realize how much I hated the clothes that I was wearing. They
Or I
weren't
hate the
me.
2 hour commute.
So
I
exactly, the
hate spending
commutes and
two,
all
three
that.
hours on the road
Yeah,
for
you
what?
realize so much about yourself. Exactly. So that's when it starts, is you get curious about yourself, and then you get curious about others because you start to become more open-minded. And that's where the individualism of America, and I'm not gonna get on a huge soapbox, so I
Yeah.
won't do that. But I think one of the symptoms of that individualism of America, which is, hey, it's me, me, me. And we do prop individuals up of, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and, have that effort and take pride in your individuality, which is beautiful. It's any strength taken to an extreme becomes a weakness. However,
Yeah, it's a
when
Horatio
too much,
Alger myth. Like, not
exactly.
everybody's gonna be Bill Gates.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
becomes that
everybody's
my way
gonna
or the
be like
highway.
Elon because it's like, not even put these guys down, but the fact is, they are not there by themselves.
Exactly.
A lot of things were built out of other people's ideas, other people's,
Mhm.
money, other people's things. So people want to take credit. You see all these kind of stories that are molded to say these people just did it by themselves,
Mhm.
that they're somehow superhuman,
Mhm.
that they're better than everybody else, and everybody's got to be like them.
Yeah.
And my whole point is like people who take away other people's choices,
Mhm.
people who limit diversity, people who limit exploration and force you down a narrow point of view. There's no way that that's actually expansive in a
Absolutely
world
not.
that's actually dependent on globalization.
Yeah.
Why would you think that like going back to like a nationalism And, and being a history buff, a political science major, is like, what did
Right.
nationalism do in the 30s?
Hmm.
What did it do? The people need to read history. They need to understand social sciences and psychology. It's not like the woke bad thing. Like everybody, oh, you can't say that. Well, I said that. Sorry, but the idea is, diversity is like the bad thing because people want to say it's the bad thing. They don't
That's
look at
unfortunate.
greed and people who are in the same space all the time don't make good decisions.
Hmm.
Right? People
Yeah,
who don't have
groupthink.
other groupthink become like danger think.
Absolutely. And that narrative of over individualism and sameness takes away from the culture of collaboration that the world is moving towards. And if we do not move collectively, not only as a country, but as individuals and people and teams and the world, if we do not, as a species, move towards collaboration and interdependence, we're not going to survive. Simple as that,
Yeah,
because it's
I mean,
taking away from the collaboration that we could have such amazing things on this planet from
well, you think
collaboration.
about like if you really want to go to Mars,
Hmm.
the whole human race has to work toward that.
Absolutely. We all gotta wanna go to Mars. Simple as
I- i-
that.
If you want to solve the climate problem,
Yeah.
everybody has to work together instead of working against each other.
Mhm.
Like,
Absolutely.
if you want to solve resource problems, the thing about this is like when you think of it in a national point of view or nationalism, then you don't think like a human being. If it's somebody came from another world and they looked at a human being, it's like being is actually a creature that belongs on the planet Earth, right? So why can that human being, not be in a certain place,
Mhm.
right? It's like if you think of like a human, if you think of it, you jump to like Star Trek, the idea of the Federation. It's
Yeah.
like that whole science fiction world is everybody was given the opportunity to become their best self and
Mhm.
do what's best for humanity. Well, it's socialism. Well, no, it's not. It's actually thinking like it's trying to actually
It's
elevate
humanism,
humanity.
honestly.
Humanism. Like, what's wrong with that? But
Yeah.
you want to go back to like, I get mine, you get yours. We fight against each other for scarce resources instead of pulling together to build more resources.
Yeah. And it's unfortunately, it comes back to that fear because it is simpler to be in a role of me versus them because it's simply black and white. And it's safer. People mentally and psychologically feel safer in a binary because it's a structure and they don't have to change it and they don't have to challenge it. And when a neurodivergent or a non-traditional person shows up in any way, shape, or form, it could be, a black woman that's choosing to show her hair in a
Yeah,
certain
natural.
way that's not seen in other ways, which is beautiful hair. I had a person I was talking to the other day, and she showed up with this big old afro, and I went, "Oh my god, your hair's beautiful!" And we immediately started connecting. It was just fantastic.
Yeah,
But
some people would tell you you can't. That's a bad. You actually change
the
the
dress code and
code
stuff,
dress
yeah,
code to say that that's against the rule.
yeah, and it's so unfortunate because when we
My
embrace
my
that,
daughter's got dreads, right? And there were
that's
places that
awesome.
they wanted to say you couldn't have the dreads. Like,
Yeah,
why?
it's so unfortunate.
Why
Exactly.
what's that got to do with anything? She's an
Mhm.
A student.
Yeah, it does.
What's
Appearance
it
does
got to
not
do with
affect.
anything? It's like the things like that,
Mhm.
like cultural oppressiveness for
Yeah.
just the point of like I say it, so you do it
Mhm.
without any logical reason.
Yeah.
People are gonna
Tears us
push back.
apart.
Like if we were
Mhm.
supposed to be the land of the free, it's like when you say something that's illogical, it's coming from a certain point of view that might be a majority point of view in that narrow focus, but it's like the whole point is like we're supposed to be able to have
Mhm.
freedom. But some people's idea of freedom is to take away your freedom and say your freedom is offensive to them.
Mhm. That's unfortunate
And
because that
that's kind of
that
age we're
offense.
living.
And now I will be slightly devil's advocate in the sense of, I understand what it's like to feel scared of differences and changes. When you have things you want to protect, changes can be scary. But I want to challenge anybody who may have been, upset by some of the things that were just said and thought, "Ooh, I don't know about that." I want to challenge you if anybody's listening to that. Think of, discomfort is not danger. A lot of times we hear things that, oh, that's different, so I'm scared of it. And again, that snake versus, a phone call from or a text from your spouse or boss, and you go into fight or flight. Think about, hey, discomfort is not danger. sit in the discomfort for a second and think, hold on, what is this telling me about myself? Does it mean that I'm not as open-minded about different cultures? Or is it, hey, I haven't exposed myself enough to this culture. I don't understand it. And so it's showing up in my heart as scary. When you have more of those diverse experiences, like I said, that's when you're able to almost have a mirror to yourself. And that's when you can find your own authenticity of, oh, I really like, this jazz music versus I like techno. It's just depending on,
Know what you
who are
like.
you?
Doesn't
Yeah,
mean you ban techno because you don't like it.
exactly. Exactly.
That's the difference. It's like
Mhm,
somebody said, well, like there's all types of music, but then say this is the only music. It's like the state
mhm.
approved music,
Right.
right? So you want to go back to that old, the Red Scare. It's like
Ugh,
state
yeah.
approved this, state approved like so, 5-year
Mhm,
plan. Okay. But then when you tell people you can only have this,
mhm,
right? But you say, well, what if these people over here were saying it? Well, that's bad.
mhm.
What if you say it? It's good. Like explain
Yeah,
it, right? Like if you
and that's
think
the
you're number
danger.
one, how come you're number 38?
Mhm.
If you actually go look at it, like a lot of American, like a lot, not in the top 10 in
Yep.
terms of performance. They're like 38, but you're going around saying you're number one,
Mhm.
right? Will you go and actually look at the numbers and not say it's a lie? Will you actually honestly go do some research and read something instead of just hearing it like from a third party? Like
Mhm.
people need to actually, do some homework
Absolutely. It's
and
the world we live
before
in. You need
yeah,
to.
because there's information that's going on the net is not just is not always homework,
Mhm.
right? You need to actually cite things. It's like when you go and write a research paper in college. I went to Bowdoin.
Yep.
You write that paper. You got to cite. You can't plagiarize.
Mhm.
You got to say where you got it from. You got to make a critical argument. You got to have critical thinking. You got to think with a Socratic method.
Yep.
You can't just say because he said it or she said it or they said it.
Mhm.
And we're living in an age where that's where people say that things are like, that's it because this
Absolutely.
person said it, that person said it, I read it there without any
Absolutely.
critical analysis or looking into it.
Yeah, and again, there's that fear, right? Because it's easier to hear somebody say it and say, "Well, they're on a podcast, right? Oh,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
know better."
podcast
It's like, no, I'm just a dude just like you, and you gotta take those media and also not only do the external homework of finding out, okay, this is a credible source, etc., but also do the inner work of saying, how is this making me feel? What values are coming up? And we talk about embracing authenticity in this title. What values are coming up for me? If I get really upset about this news thing that came up, well, what is it about that? Am I upset at the lack of justice for so and so, or am I scared that this leads to, like, this is a snowball effect that'll come and become danger for me? Okay, what value? Because if you're scared of something that happening to you, then it may be, well, it's showing me the things I want to protect. And so then you're able to say, okay, let me reaffirm that I can protect these things, not through controlling the external, but from understanding internally, hey, I have a strong support system, or I have a doomsday plan or something. And that safety then reduces that fear. And then guess what happens? You can be more open-minded. And then you're able to take the emotional and cognitive burden of critical thinking a little further, which is, I will admit, we're in a world where you get so much information.
Oh
It
Lord.
is it is burnout. You get burnt
Yeah,
out doing homework. So take that time to sit with those values and say, okay, I'm fueling my cup. Now I can go out. But if you get triggered by a newspaper or a news article or something like that, sit with it and say, what is this telling me about myself? Take the time to take a step back and then decide, I'm going to see how I feel about that in a moment. I'm going to sit with it. Because when you just react, like with the wolf in that fight or
yeah.
flight, that's when you're fighting or flying. And you're going back to that like barbarian time of like, I'm just going to get mine and everybody else can, insert profanity here.
But
Right.
everybody's going into their camps, right?
Exactly.
Instead of like I said, where the human camp, right,
Mhm.
is all humanity.
All
And
humanity.
people will bring it down to like the male camp, the female camp,
Yeah,
racial camp, the culture, like nationalism, like religion. It's like if all the things that separate us instead of all the things that bring us together.
exactly. We have to embrace all the differences because it's the beauty of humanity is in our lack of sameness. that's the beauty of humanity, and that's what makes us who we are. And when you think, well, we're all human beings, and I am a whole person, and I accept and love my whole self, and you're a whole person, and I love and accept your whole self, and that's makes you think of the word namaste. With
Mhm.
the prayer, I believe it's the God in me sees the God in you, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
It's
the
a
direct
very
translation, but something along
enlight
those lines. Yeah.
enlightened point of view, because we kinda live in a world where people are kinda told to, the other is the wolf.
Hmm. That's what they're
And,
told.
like, and the thing is, like, all the differences are the problem, right? Instead of the solution.
Yeah.
Where human beings is like it is like the creativity of an Einstein,
Hmm.
you know, the creativity of any of the Renaissance people. You're
Hmm.
going back to Eritrea and the Egyptians, like people who the human race has always been very innovative in
Hmm.
terms of where it could be in mathematics and technology and writing, literature and the arts. And then you get people that don't want to look at art.
Hmm.
I think that art to me is like that's so like deflating to young
Yeah.
people. Like if you're told to only do science without the arts, like in the Renaissance, it was that people were Renaissance people because they did the arts and science together,
Yeah.
right? And to separate it out and say the arts are foo-foo and it's only the math, but it's forgetting that there's a lot of art to the math. And
Absolutely.
you get into the advanced mathematics, it has a lot of art in it.
Yes, absolutely, and I'll tell you what.
So it's like it's very simple-minded and not in terms of like expansive. Like if you want
Mhm,
to go to Mars, if you want to be able to conquer the Milky Way, right?
mhm.
Be able to our solar system, be able to get to that future. You can't be into like fighting your neighbor.
Exactly, and, using that example of science and art, I mean, if you wanna go to the moon, I mean, we went to the moon, but you wanna go to Mars, you
Or you
wouldn't
want
need
to
the
colonize
scientists.
the moon, which we still haven't
Exactly.
done.
Right? Well, if you want that, you gotta have the scientists that'll do all the data and make it happen, but the artists are the ones who are gonna paint the picture to invite all the people that are not scientists to get excited about going to Mars. The artists are the ones that can connect by the heart. And not to say that artists can't be head focused and scientists can't be heart focused, but for stereotypical purposes, and
Yeah, yeah.
again, the simple binary, right? It makes it easier to digest. The scientists, they'll be the practical, and the artists will be the heart. The artists are the leaders that can say, hey, let's motivate these people to try to make something happen. Let's do the beautiful things. I am a bookish person. I consider myself scientific, and I have a lot of street smart friends because I'm not street smart, and those are my artsy friends. Those are my artists because they keep me out of trouble when I'm walking straight into hey, let's not go down that alleyway, that's kind of shady, and I'm like, really? It's just an alleyway. And they're like, no, let me tell you, let me paint you a
What's
picture
going on there?
of what's
Yeah.
about to happen. And I go, oh, that's artsy. So exactly that.
Well, I think it's real important to be able to, you know, be discerning, but
Hmm.
also be welcoming to the thing that might be like not your talent, right? So I think a
Absolutely.
lot of people like one thing, a big thing that David Bowie said is like he spent his life as an artist
Hmm.
always potentially treading water to get to the next thing because he felt like he was phoning it in if he kept on doing the same thing. So
Hmm.
you see him change like a chameleon
Yeah,
from like Ziggy Stardust to Aladdin Sane to, then wait, he kept on changing characters. Now that's very rare because a lot of times people would just stick with the thing that works. And we're
absolutely.
kind of living in an age where people just want to stick with the thing that works
Hmm.
versus pushing the envelope.
Yep, you've gotta lean into a little bit of discomfort, because when you push through the discomfort of change, you get to a new comfort level, leveling up. There's no safe way to be great, and there's no great way to be safe.
Yeah.
When you choose to be comfortable, you're either growing or you're comfortable.
Well, you
And if you
actually
take it,
like risking your safety.
exactly. And you stay the same. You're not leading. You're not embracing authenticity, because you could be so much more you if you push through the discomfort of trying to be other people.
Yeah. And the thing is, like the canon will always like you think about the canon. Like you think of guys like I'll give an example in music again. Miles Davis was the bebop king.
Yeah.
You know, created like a genre. Everybody says that's jazz. A lot of people still define jazz as bebop as the main jazz form. Now he went and created fusion, and now all the people in the canon said that he was like a Judas. Like, what did you do? Well, how did you do that? Fusion is not jazz to some people. They think that he broke the rules.
Yeah.
So like, and then when Bob Dylan went electric, like, he suddenly had all the folk people said they actually called him a Judas. They yelled and said, "You're a Judas." It is famous. There's actually a recording of people yelling at him when he went electric, because he actually went from being folk. He went and changed it. And the people who go, and Hendrix did feedback, which was not something that you're supposed to put on a record, but he did. So it changed. People who changed the canon, they get ridiculed at first.
Yeah,
They
and
get
then
hated.
suddenly,
Everybody tells you you're doing the wrong thing. You're saying you got the wrong ideas. People, these scientists who have a new theory that goes against the canon, or like, well, he's out of his rocker.
yeah, but then by doing it, suddenly people say, wait, that's something that I can do, and they feel permission to then again be themselves.
Yeah.
That's where the all the different movements of just different types of people, neurodivergence and non-traditional, you're just by existing, anybody who may resonate with those titles in the audience, like, just by existing, you're giving others permission to be themselves. And that includes those who might not fall under those categories. If you're somebody who is just a straight man, or a black woman, or any Hispanic, anything, when you embrace your identity as your whole identity, for one example, I'm a man, but I work in a very sensitive environment. I work as a psychology practitioner and an executive coach. I sit there and I say, hey, what are the values you're embracing right now? All the things I'm saying, a lot of people will hear this and say, oh man, whatever, emasculating term they want to use for me, but this is where I connect with people. And then people see that and say, wow, thank you for being a non-toxic masculine guy. And I go, oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm just being me. And so it's effortless, but it gives people permission to, I tell my bro is like, hey man, I love you, and I don't, there was a time where people, felt that was inappropriate and things like that. Like, listen, it's just male friendship. Like, we got to support each other. And I'm going on a slight tangent, so I'll reel it back. But
no, it makes sense because, a lot of times in music, like a lot of times, well, in creativity, a lot of people think, creativity in some ways is kind of like this idea of divine feminine, right? And the idea that every person has like a female kind of side and a male side. And when they kind of go into the creativity, it's kind of feminine, because creativity is like birth and stuff. So kind of there's a whole like school of thought that goes that way, right? But I found is like, as being a creative person, that I do tend to have some of that sensitivity, empathy, which are not thought of as like the kind of male things. The male is like, you gotta be tough and just suck it up.
Yeah, the stoicism.
Not cry, not reveal your feelings, be a tough guy. Even in prison, I had a psychologist or therapist on, and he was relaying some stories about people in prison, all these tough guys, 6-pack abs, tattoos, looking like they're gonna like tear you apart, right? Get into the room with him and they're crying.
Yeah.
And then they would say, well, don't you ever tell the rest of the inmates that I'm doing that, right? Because it's like, that's the problem. It's like there's people are more than what they appear to be.
They're a whole person.
And the people have all these masks. There's books like Frantz Fanon, they're like, the people about masks. Like, these ideas is like, you have to understand like the human condition. It's not as simple as black and white.
It's that fear again.
Wants to make it that way.
It's that fear again, simple as that. And it's the men who say, I'm not allowed to be sad, or whatever belief they hold. And it's like, once you are able to tear that belief and make a safe place and say, hey, you're allowed to cry. If anybody insults another person for crying, no, you are, as a human being, you are automatically entitled to the entire range of human emotions, because that comes with the meal. It comes with the existence. You're allowed to feel. So feel. That would be my message to anybody out there, is just feel. Like, you are
and if you start to feel, if you start to have that, the idea, the Victorians had this idea of the looking glass self-examination, to actually get to where you are, to all the great poets, the Wordsworth, Tennyson, Longfellow, Blake, they all had this idea of the looking glass self. They look in that mirror, they look at who they really are.
Absolutely.
And they would talk about like the feminine, talking about the masculine, talk about all these things. You talk about, sexuality, like
Mhm.
philosophy, spiritualism, everything. It's getting, this is the age of the Enlightenment.
Mhm.
People being willing to challenge. So a lot of
Exactly.
these people going back and thinking about, oh, this is the great like Western civilization, but read what they wrote. It's
Mhm.
not what you're saying.
Exactly.
Go and read the books,
Is
and then
the
you'll find a lot of what you're saying on these podcast bros and tech bros and people saying things have not read the books or are not telling you the truth. So go read them yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, it just makes me recall the term art is not meant to be beautiful. It's meant to make you feel something, And so
Mhm.
sometimes you feel a contrast. You say, "Ooh, I don't know how I feel about that." Good. Explore that in yourself. That leads to authenticity. That makes you go, "Oh, this is telling me about me." You are showing yourself who you are every single day, and the world is showing you who you are slash who you are not every single day also. If you hate your commute to work, why don't chase a
Change it.
hybrid job or a
Yeah,
remote
change it.
job? If you're feeling called to be a musician when you're an accountant currently, why not try picking up a guitar on the side? Chase your dreams. That's what authenticity
Well,
is
that's what the
you
Great
gotta be a little
Resignation was.
weirdo. Yeah, you
Great
gotta be a little weird.
Resignation because they got a boost because of COVID.
Yep,
It was
that's
like
exactly
blessing
it.
and curse. People had to face themselves.
Yeah, you had
They
to face yourself during
they
that
actually
time.
got forced into a looking glass self moment.
You did. That's an excellent way to put it. Yeah.
And then people became entrepreneurs. I talked to a lot of them on the show.
Mhm.
We've already done 1,000 episodes, you know, and it's like a lot of the people we were talking to in the 2020s, 2021, 22 were people who kind of hit this crucible moment and discovered, like, I don't want to be an attorney. I don't want to be a surgeon. I want to go do this. I want to be a writer. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to go do something. My parents told me you shouldn't
Yeah.
do that. Go be a lawyer.
I mean,
And
yeah,
now they
even
suddenly say, well, you know what? I'm not happy being a lawyer.
yeah,
I
you're
got
not
the
happy.
degree, 20-year practice, but I don't want
Yep.
to do it.
It just recalls to mind I have a local friend, a local DJ who used to be a lawyer. So he was an attorney who turned DJ. So that resonated with me immediately. I'm like, yep, that made me think of my friend. I mean, and the courage that it takes to make a change like that, those are the people that lead the world, really. And
Yeah.
you don't have to be leaders or be CEOs or have a million followers. It's the people that are living authentically and they show others, oh my God, I want to be like that person because they are just so happy living life because they're living their life.
You want to give permission for people to be their secret, sauce. Like is guess what that is? That's you. It's not
Yep.
trying to be Mr. Jones,
Mhm.
right? It's not trying to keep up with him. It's actually going and seeing, what do you have to say? What do you have to give? And you have it. Everybody has something because nobody is the same.
Mhm.
Everybody talks about the sameness. It's like, what our key attribute is not the sameness. Like it's like everybody knows how to turn a phrase their own way. They
Mhm.
they have their own view of things, and that view they can go and they can talk about it. And you know what? You might get hit back with the haters that don't like what you have to say. But the
Absolutely.
law of attraction says that if you put something out there, then you will find the people who resonate with it or don't.
Mhm. And you know
And
what? Again, that fear, if you fear rejection for being yourself, I want you to try and practice. You know, practice rejection. I go to store clerks all the time or cashiers and I say, "Hey, can I get the employee discount?" And I make it as a joke and half the time it works. They're
yeah,
like,
they'll just do it.
"Oh, where's your I went to a first session for a Reiki massage and I said, "Can I get like a 10% discount cuz it's my first time?" And they went, we never do discounts, but just because you had the gall to like ask, absolutely. This
Yeah,
is a funny story. And I go, absolutely. Practice being rejected because when you get rejected, people say it all the time, rejection is redirection, but it really is. It's that contrast of, okay, this is not for me. It's not part of the life that I'm crafting. I've been rejected from that, and that's okay. Either you have that call within yourself to say, no, keep at it because I'm going to reach this goal. Or you have that moment of, you know what, maybe that wasn't meant for me. Maybe it's good that I didn't have that relationship or get that job because I would have been living somewhere else or, whatever number of things. So again, listen to that little voice in your heart, but you got to be quiet enough and you got to be willing to lean into the discomfort.
I think it's like there's listening skill set that's to listen to the lessons like that are for you, that are kind of coming
Mhm.
from your life. And then it's the lessons that you learn from other people by actually listening to what they say.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times today, people don't have good listening skills for either one of those.
Yep, it's unfortunate. It can be overwhelming, but dip your toes in, and, I would love to give a little shameless plug. If you ever wanna talk, I do, free connection calls on my LinkedIn. It's just scrolling on the
Awesome.
screen right there, so if you ever wanna talk about finding authenticity, hit me up. I'm always available to talk to people and make connections.
That's awesome. Because I think that's what it's all about. Like that's why we
Mhm.
provide these links, and I'm gonna actually put that linked up LinkedIn one up so people actually have it there. Now people don't have to worry because these links are clickable
Mhm.
within the podcast description, or I'll put both of them up. So like we've been live on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, and within those platforms in the podcast description, these links are actually clickable. So
Excellent.
once they're actually fully published, once we're off the air, they'll be in there. So we'll make sure that people check that out.
Absolutely. Now, Phantom, I know you said that you had another one coming up, so we were gonna cut right about 45 minutes. Is there any closing remarks or anything, or any last questions you'd like to lightning round with me before we head off?
Is there anything that people would you think the audience would find interesting about you that they wouldn't know? And it's just kind of question I asked. Is there something that you would like to relate to the audience that they wouldn't expect about you?
I always share in my story, I was homeschooled and I'm diagnosed autistic. A lot of people won't tell that. And I was honestly a really, really hardcore people pleaser also. And I'm still working through that. And a lot of times when I'm speaking, because I'm so concise and direct and like I enjoy speaking so much and I can be animated and work a room, they are very surprised by the amount of anxiety that I hold. But for those who feel anxious or are overthinkers, know that I stand there with you. I definitely do. I'm a ruminator, and I we talk about embracing authenticity and the standing between multiple different identities, I guess, is something that you wouldn't know because I carry myself and my whole self so well from the work that I've done and the work that I get to help people do, which is to hold both that masculine and feminine energy, both that the white side and the Filipino side within me, both the
Mhm.
neurodivergent, passing as a level one or what was previously known as high functioning autistic individual, but also knowing that I have needs that if people saw from a traditional background, they might ridicule. And I have been ridiculed when I was younger and couldn't mask as well. So sitting in all the different identities, I guess what would be surprising about me is I feel the struggle. So don't take this version of me and say, "Oh, Aaron's got it all together," because I'll tell you what, I do not. So I hope that comes as a surprise, but maybe not. Maybe you can see me and we'll connect by the heart. But yeah,
I think that's really, yeah, what I found is a lot of people who are out there in the public space, when you get behind their story, you find out that they actually had a lot of anxiety, or
absolutely.
they're not as confident as they might appear to be. And with musicians, we find that a lot. You get
Yeah.
somebody on stage, you think they're like, "Oh, that person's in command." You get them off the stage and like they can't hardly, they don't want, they're very shy,
Hmm.
can't converse, and you're like, wow, this person doesn't have it together like they had it up there. you know
Exactly.
because you have
Exactly.
multiple faces that you can put up,
Hmm.
and people don't realize that you can get to a certain talent where you can you can, in this space you can do this, in this space you do that,
Hmm.
right? And people think you're doing that everywhere, and
Yeah.
it's maybe not true.
Absolutely. It's hard to be. I used to think, and I guess this will be my closing remark, is I used to think that authenticity was being my full self all the time. I love the Renaissance fair, and I actually own some pieces of armor, and I like to dress up and do all that stuff, cosplay stuff like that. And obviously, I can't bring a full-on costume of. I'm not going to pull up to a speech in a full suit of armor, but I used to think authenticity was being my whole self all the time, and so I'd bring parts of my goofy self into work trying to make things fun, but sometimes it would become immature, and I wasn't helpful with clients sometimes. And so I found to channel that through speaking, I like to do a lot of games and call and response during my official speeches, or, in my coaching, I'm able to sit in that sensitivity. And then, maybe when I hang out with friends, I'm more of a leader and I'm listening, guys, I just want to do this. I'll be a little more, for lack of a better term, selfish, because
Mm,
with clients, I'm being very selfless listening and all that. So I would say if you also think that authenticity is being your whole self all the time, which some people hear in like a very blunt, or that's just how I am, brutally honest person who's more concerned about being brutal than honest. That's kind of what comes to mind when you think of that. I would shift that belief to being authentic is having space in your whole life to honor all the parts of you.
yeah.
So I have a part of me that comes to work, and there's a part of me that plays, and there's a part of me that shows up with my friends, and all those are parts of me. So I don't have to be my 100% self all the time, because the life that I've crafted allows me to be my 100% authentic self. So rather than thinking moment to moment, I'm thinking like week to week. Have I been my gym bro, like, fitness self, and then have I been my coach self, and have I been my speaker self, and something like
Yeah.
that.
I think everybody has like so many different facets to their
They
self
do. And that's the
that
beauty.
people might want to pin it down. It's like, I'm the salesman. That's me. Like, well, that's not exactly who you are.
And that's
Like,
part of you, and that's valid. But
part of
hey,
you, but
don't put your whole yeah.
that's not your whole self.
Yeah, don't put your eggs in one basket. You're allowed to be the whole chicken coop, or whatever
Yep.
metaphor we want to use. But
But thank you again for being on the show. I appreciate it.
absolutely.
And we have your LinkedIn there. We had the other link that we had up. Put it up again. That's the other one, but both of them will be there. And I thank you again for being a guest on the Family Like a Ghost podcast
Yeah,
tonight.
and just to clarify, also, it's the integratedleader.com. I don't think it was the correct link, but we can probably fix all of that. It is integratedleader.com. That is our site. And if you want to switch that,
Oh, it's that one. Yeah, yeah.
it's all good. Yeah, integratedleader.com is what we do, is executive coaching and leadership consulting. But again, if you want to contact me on LinkedIn and get connected, let's make magic. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Phantom. I had a fun time, and I really enjoyed the back and forth we had. So
Thank you.
thank you so much.